Most business owners have a number in their head. The number their business is worth. The number they expect to retire on or hand to their kids or use to fund whatever comes next. And most of them are going to get roughly half of it. Not because they built the wrong business and not because the market is bad, but because of one thing that affects every business valuation and that almost nobody talks about until it's too late. In this video, I want to show you the gap, the difference between what owner-dependent businesses sell for and what owner-optional ones sell for, and why that gap is entirely within your control. Because there are two types of business sale, and most owners are heading for the less valuable one without knowing it. When a business sells, it typically sells for a multiple of its earning, usually EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. The multiple is what buyers are willing to pay per pound of profit the business generates. And the multiple varies enormously depending on one factor above almost all others. Owner-dependent businesses, businesses where the owner is central to the daily operation, the key client relationships, and the decisions that matter, typically sell at 2 to 3 times EBITDA. Owner-optional businesses, businesses that can run, generate revenue, and serve clients without the owner being present, sell at 4 to 5 times EBITDA, sometimes more. Same industry, same revenue, same profit, different multiple. On a business generating 500,000 in EBITDA, that's the difference between a 1 million sale and a 2.5 million sale. On a business generating 1 million EBITDA, it's the difference between 2 million and 5 million. That gap is not small, and it's created entirely by how much the business needs the owner to function. Think about two businesses in the same sector. Same revenue, same team size, same profit margin. In the first one, the owner is the relationship with every major client. They're the approver of every significant decision, and the person the team goes to when something doesn't fit the process. In the second business, the owner is known in the market, but the team handles everything. Clients are served, decisions get made, the business moves. A buyer looks at both and sees very different things. In the first, they're not just buying the business, they're buying a dependency on a person who's about to leave. The discount isn't punishment, it's just maths. Buyers price in the risk that the business doesn't function the same way once the owner walks out. And in an owner-dependent business, that risk is real. Quick pause here. If you want to understand where your business sits on the dependency scale right now, I've built a free audit that maps it across 12 areas of the business. It takes less than 5 minutes, and it tells you exactly which parts of your business would hold up under a buyer's due diligence and which ones wouldn't. The link is in the description. To understand why the multiple gap exists, you need to understand what a buyer is actually purchasing. When someone buys a business, they're not buying what it's done. They're buying what it will do, the future cash flows, the client relationships, the team capability, the systems that generate revenue without the seller being involved. Every element of due diligence is asking that same question. Does this business work without the current owner? And every place the answer is no is a place where the buyer reduces the price or walks away. The things buyers look for include client revenue that isn't dependent on a personal relationship with the owner, a team that can make decisions without daily direction, knowledge that's documented and accessible rather than locked in someone's head, and processes that produce consistent results regardless of who's running them. When those things are in place, the buyer is acquiring a machine. When they're not, the buyer is acquiring a machine with a squeaky wheel and a motor that's likely to explode at any moment. Here's what it looks like. The business that loses its largest client within 6 months of sale because that client's relationship was with the previous owner. The team that underperforms in the first year because they'd never had to operate without daily direction. The knowledge gaps that surface in the first board meeting when the new owner asks how something works and nobody can answer. These aren't unusual outcomes. They're what happens when the multiple gap isn't addressed before the sale. Buyers see this before sellers do. The due diligence process is specifically designed to find it. And whatever leverage a buyer needs to reduce the price or add earn-out conditions, owner dependency gives it to them. Here's the context that makes this urgent. In the UK alone, there are over 160,000 business directors aged 60 and above, with more than 158 billion in business assets between them. Most of those owners are planning to exit within the next decade, and fewer than 1 in 10 businesses successfully sells. The rest are dissolved, passed on to family, whether family want them or not, or they're simply closed. Years of work, significant value, all gone because the business couldn't be transferred to someone new. Owner dependency is one of the primary reasons. A business built around one person is extremely difficult to hand to another person. And the longer that structure stays in place, the harder it becomes to change. Because the owner gets busier, the business gets more complex, and the habits of dependency run deeper. This means that the business owner who expected to sell at 60 and retire comfortably found that buyers were only willing to pay a fraction of what they'd expected. Or the buyers weren't interested at all. It means the owner who worked for 30 years building something significant ended up closing it because there was no viable exit. These aren't edge cases. They're what happens to the majority of businesses that don't address this early enough. The time to close the multiple gap is not the year before you want to sell. It's now, because the work takes time, and because every year it stays unaddressed, the gap costs you more than just the future sale price. It costs your time, your energy, and your options. The multiple gap isn't closed by having better accounts or a bigger revenue number. It's closed by removing the dependency. And that's work that pays off whether you ever sell the business or not. Buyers pay more for 4 things: predictable revenue that doesn't rely on the owner's relationships, a team that operates well without daily direction, knowledge that lives in the business rather than in someone's head, and documented processes that produce consistent results. Every one of those things also makes the business easier to run today. They reduce the owner's workload. They improve the quality of decisions. They make growth more achievable. Closing the multiple gap isn't just an exit strategy. It's a better way to run a business. The work is the same in either case. You're transferring knowledge out of your head and into a format the business can use. You're bringing your team into client relationships, so those relationships belong to the business. You're building frameworks for decisions so the team can operate without asking you first. What it looks like when it's working is a client base where the relationships are genuinely between the client and the business, not just the owner, where a team resolves problems, serves clients, and makes reasonable decisions without a daily checklist from the top, where a knowledge base means a new person can get up to speed without spending 6 months learning from the owner directly. When a buyer looks at that business, the question, does it work without the owner, has an obvious answer. And that answer is what the multiple is based on. The multiple isn't fixed, it's built. And the building happens one transferred relationship, one documented process, one decision framework at a time, long before anyone sits across a table to negotiate a price. Here's the question worth asking yourself today. If a buyer did due diligence on your business right now, looked at your client relationships, your team's capability, your documented processes, your decision-making structure, what would they find? Would they find a business that works without you? Or would they find a business that depends on you for most of the things that matter? The honest answer to that question is your current multiple. And the gap between that answer and where you want to be is exactly the work that needs doing. If you want to map it properly, the 12 chains audit scores your dependency across 12 areas and shows you exactly where the gaps are. It's free, takes less than 5 minutes, and the link is in the description. If this was useful, there's more on this channel about what it looks like to build a business that runs and sells without you. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.